everyone, I'm Marinus Astra of Song of Story, and today I'll be your host, Lady Astra. We're going to be taking a look at my original board game, Arcanum Incantatum, Arenas of the Mad Magi. Specifically, the Tabletop Simulator version. It's like a demo version. Not all of the components are accurate here. I have another video that will either be linked in the description of this video, or if this video comes out first, I'll leave a comment on it with a link to the other one and pin it. That video is going to actually be talking about the real components that are going to be in the game. This is also using an old board. So is my current physical copy. The board is the last thing that we are working on. The priority was the cards and everything, but you'll notice I'm just using generic. Instead of uploading all the tokens, I just kind of grabbed some pawns and some of these little orb things from Tabletop Simulator. They have actual chip tokens that will be in the base game I'll go over in that video. For this one though, all we are focused on today is what this game is all about and how you play it. We're going to start off with these three decks. I know the board's kind of big and in the middle here, but we're going to ignore the board for now. So just ignore the board. We'll just zoom in a little bit. You will notice that these two decks have the same back, and then while these are brown and these are purple, these also have a hollow star and these have a filled in star. One of the reasons for that, not just the different color, but the difference in the shade of the star, how this one is actually filled in, is just like some of the elements here. Like you can see, these are the actual alchemical symbols for these elements. They can be easily differentiated from each other. That's all to make the game colorblind accessible. It's all colorblind friendly. So you can easily tell these cards apart from these cards. Now, these cards have the same back because they're actually going to be added to this deck during setup, whereas these are never included in this deck. Well, what are these? Why are these 11 cards on the side here? Well, to find out, we're actually going to have to flip these cards and start looking at what cards are like on the front of them. You'll see here, on the front of these cards, there's a little pyramid icon. That little pyramid means artifact. These are the 11 artifacts in the base version of the game. These 11 artifacts are removed from the deck during, like when you unset up, the opposite of setup. When you pack away the game, these are kept separate so that you can easily set up next time. During setup, you'll shuffle all these decks. Shuffle all these decks. They are all shuffled. Then, for the amount of players that you are setting up for, you will take 2 artifacts from the deck per player. Say we're setting up for a, let's say, 3-player game. Right in the middle of a 5-player total that this game has. 2 to 5 players. I'm going to add them to this deck. I'm going to shuffle this deck. They are shuffled in. You saw that brought our total up to 72 cards in this deck for a 3-player game. These remaining artifact cards will be returned to the box. We will not be using them at any point for the remainder of the game. This is to increase the difference in every time you play the game, keep that variety going, and also prevent one player from getting too many artifacts. The next thing you will do, and technically you can do this first, you don't have to do these in any particular order here. They're not connected decks. You will shuffle this deck and deal 1 to each player. So each one of our players is getting 1 of these cards. They will get it face down. Nobody knows about these cards. These are your signature spells. I'll show an example from the deck here. These are your signature spell cards. You notice in the top left they have this lightning bolt icon. That means it's an incantation or an instant spell. And they all have a different icon in the top right depending on who it's able to target. That's your target spot. And unlike normal spell cards, if I grab something from the deck here, that might only have 1 elemental icon on them, all the signature spells have 3. They're the only cards that have 3. And that is what makes them signature spells. They are going to be all about this board. We're going to look at more what that entails later. But that which makes these so powerful and so unique, and why everybody only gets 1 of them, and why the rest are returned to the box. These are effectively your big whammy. These are going to hit hard and possibly win you the game the moment they're cast, or if not, drastically turn the tide in your favor, if it wasn't already. These signature spells can never be blocked by another player. They can be deflected against you. They can have the damage they deal reduced. They can trigger retaliates and make you take damage for attacking somebody else that has a retaliate effect. But they can never be blocked, so you're never wasting them when you play them. Nothing can ever cause you to discard them, even playing them. However, once you do play it for the first time, it is revealed for the rest of the game. This represents your character's mask. You are taking the role in this game as a masked magi competing for the role of an archmage. You unmask yourself by casting your signature spell that denotes who you are. It makes you recognizable to the other players and helps them strategize against preventing you from doing that signature spell again, etc., etc. These are big, powerful cards. They do not count as part of your hand size, nothing like that. They are a bonus that represents you as a mage in this arena of elements. This is effectively your character card. Then, you will deal each player 5 cards. And those would be your 3 hands that would be given out to your players. The final step you do is you put this on the space on the board corresponding for the deck, and you will discard the top card of the deck, which we already kind of looked at before. Actually, no, we shuffled it. So that's just kind of a fun coincidence that card came back up. But you look at the card here, and you see what elemental icons it has on it. In this case, it has fire. Now, that little red arrow icon, the little red arrow down, because it's a single arrow, it means consume the element. However, for this particular step, we're not paying attention to the arrow icon. We're only paying attention to the elemental icon. So it says fire. Right? All these are going to be on their lowest space. This is the space referred to as dormant. This is when an element is dormant in the arena. These tracks represent their presence in the arena. This final step with dealing with these cards to get them all set up, that card that you discard that starts the discard pile is going to decide which elements start in your arena. In this case, it's fire. So we start with 1 fire. So we move it up 1 towards the peak. The closer you are to the elemental icon, the more presence that element has in the arena. That's what this board is. This is our arena board. And as you play cards, they will be manipulating elements, with green up arrows creating, moving them up the track, and red arrow cards moving them down the track. If at any point an element is dormant, like they are in the beginning, as you see, earth is all the way in, water is all the way in, spirit is all the way in, and air is all the way in, you cannot consume that element. So if I had this card in my hand, and I'm like, ooh, I want to play this card, I have an enchantment that's been placed on me, I'm slowly, poisoned or something. I want to get rid of that poison. Well, I want to use some purifying fire to get rid of the poison, but say that fire is gone. Fire is not in the arena. I cannot play this card because there is no fire for me to consume to cast it. However, if fire was present, I could consume it. And if it was maxed out in this final space, I could consume it as well. I could theoretically even consume it another time if I had to. Which is going to be involved with these signature spells, if I actually look at them over here. You'll notice that these spells have double down arrows. This means double consume. You'll also occasionally find a double create that will move it 2 steps. Likewise with the double create or the double consume, I can't be like, oh, the element's here, so I can at least consume 1 step and cast the card. No, you cannot play that card unless you can take the element down the 2 necessary steps. It's like your mana. So that's how consuming works. And why you start with something in the arena. It gives each game, again, a little bit of variety, and it lets somebody kind of kick the game off with a bang. If they happen to have a spell that needs fire, and you drew this card that gives fire, well, now they're in luck, because there's fire in the arena. Some cards will add 2 elements. Sometimes they won't add any, and you'll start on a completely neutral ground, and all players will have a fair start. It all is completely dependent on what card you discard. Gives it a little bit of randomization. This represents the arena, whereas this purple card, the signature spell that you get, is your character. This is the arena you're fighting in. Now, consuming, you can't play the card if you can't consume. However, if an element is maxed out, say that fire. Say water is maxed out, and we want to play Water Bolt, right? We want to create water, but water's already maxed. There's no more spaces for it to go to. What happens here? Can I not play this card? No, you can play the card, but you are overcharging the element. There is no limit to how often that element can be placed in an arena. It'll just never move farther up on the track. It's just gotten to such volatile levels that now you are actually hurting yourself in the process. So if you go to create an element that is already maxed out, you're going to take 1 point of irreducible damage. Say that I am the blue player. This is our HP track. This is going to be moved and condensed to look better on the new board structure. But imagine I'm the blue player. I cast this Water Bolt. Yeah, I'm going to get 1 damage off on the opponent. That's what the black mask there means. It means target one person of your choice. In this case, I would target an opponent of mine. So I shoot an opponent of mine. I deal 1 damage to them. But oh no, water's already maxed. I end up creating it and overcharging it. I take 1 damage as well. Is that card worth it? Probably not. You probably want to save that one for when it's down here. But if that was a deal 3 damage card, maybe I would consider taking 1 damage to output a higher damage value against my enemies. Last one standing on this track is the Survivor. This is your hit points. Whenever you take damage, you move down the track. Whenever you heal, you move up the track. If you, at any point in time, would take damage that puts you below 1, your token is removed from the board and you are dead. You are no longer part of the game. All of your cards are discarded and your signature spell is returned to the box. Usually, by the time the first player falls, everybody else is close behind. I've at most seen 3 turns go by, but the turns are pretty quick in this game outside of the very first time you play. The first time you play, you're kind of getting the hang of it, learning the rules, seeing what the cards do. Once you kind of know what the cards do, it goes snap, 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 and if someone dies, if you have a lot of players and they're the first one down, they're not going to be sitting there twiddling their thumbs. Everyone else is going to be shortly behind them, and then you can shuffle and start anew with a new round of the game. They're meant to be pretty quick, and you have multiple ways you can choose to start. You can do a small game and start at 15 hit points. This is recommended for 2-player, or you can do a longer game and start at 20. You can never have more than 20 health, and if you start at 15 health, you can still heal. Even if you started there, the maximum is always 20. It doesn't change even if you play a shorter game. Moving on, there are multiple different types of cards. We've already seen the instant icon. Instant cards are ones that you will, on your turn, play from your hand, and when you play them, they are simply discarded. You do their steps in order, you figure out their target, you manipulate the elements, and you consume the effects. Or you not consume the effects, but you do the effects. For example, this card has a white mask. A white mask means target self, whereas the black mask is target one other person. The white mask is always yourself. So in this case, if I cast Guidance, I would create Spirit, and then I would draw 2 cards. So I would draw 2 cards. I would go boom, boom. 2 cards. Here we go. Another type of card you have is Enchantment. Again, type is in the top left. You have these little purple starry icons. These purple icons are for enchantments. Enchantments, when played, are not discarded. They are instead, again, played on your turn, but they're played in front of the target's play area. Again, white mask, so I would play this one in front of myself. A lot of enchantments are self, but you also have some that be played on others, like Immolation and Poison Arrow, that will do damage, lingering damage to people. So I enchant myself in this case, voila, and I would decrease Spirit that was just created, and I would increase the Earth, and now, at the start of all my turns, I could heal. So enchantments will do a lot of things like that, generally a start of turn effect. Sometimes they'll have a reduce effect, reduce changing the damage you take. It can reduce to 0. So if you have reduce 1 and somebody deals 1 damage to you, you don't take anything because you reduce it. And it would change 3 damage to 2 damage, 2 damage to 1 damage, and so forth. And then certain cards will specify if their damage is irreducible, similar to the way when you overcharge, you have no choice, you take that damage, you cannot reduce it. Some enchantments will also give you retaliate effects. Retaliate will make it so that when somebody hits you with an instant, so if somebody casts Water Bolt on me, but I retaliate, I deal my retaliate damage, whatever the number attached to my retaliate is, say I retaliate 1, they would take 1 damage for attacking me. If it's retaliate 2, they would take 2 damage. But it only triggers on instants, so it's only the cards like this. Similarly, if I find it in the deck here, let me find a quick example. Here we go. You also have these reaction cards, the little shield. These ones you play on other people's turns in response to instant actions. Specifically instant actions. Not to enchantments, not to potions, to instant actions. And what they do is block. So they put up a wall of some kind, and they simply negate every single effect that hits you. Now remember, effect is specifically the bottom box on a card. It is not the middle area where the elements are, right? You have your type, target, elemental manipulation that is required to cast the spell, and then the actual effects that the spell has. Block only prevents the effects so far in as they affect you. So for example, if I find in here, let me find another card. Some attacks, and this really only matters in a 3+ player game, some attacks like Firestorm have a little explosion icon for their target. This means target everybody else that isn't you. So this hits all other players. You don't block, when you block with a reaction against such an instant that does AoE damage, you are only blocking the effect as so far in as it affects you. You do not save the others from the effect. So in this 3-player game example, say one player casts Firestorm and then I cast Warding Force to block, which would also put it in the discard by the ways, right? Cast goes to the discard. I would be safe from taking that 4 damage, but the other player would still take that 4 damage. Let's say that player was red, they would take 4 damage, and they would be down some hit points, right? So blocks only protect you, they do not protect everybody else. There's even one enchantment in the deck that will block. Some reactions will give you retaliates, some will, or specifically one of the reaction cards in this entire deck will even reflect the attack upon the attacker, changing the target to the attacker. Now that kind of spell would actually save an AoE because it changes the target icon specifically, and it's also very useful for countering signature spells. It is the only card in the deck that can actually save you from being hit by a signature spell, since again, signature spells like this Raining Hail cannot be blocked. Now, there is also the artifacts that we added earlier. There we go, look at those artifacts. We got our artifacts. We also have potions. Artifacts are similar to enchantments. They're always target self. You put them out in front of you, and they're just a little bit harder to get rid of than enchantments. Majestic Trident. You'll see that this says, start of turn, if water is not maxed, create water. So as long as water is dormant or present, it will be increased a step. Now, there is one of these types of cards for every element, and there is also another artifact like this that lets you choose which one gets increased, which are all very useful. The one that lets you choose, however, if all the elements are maxed, you will be forced to overcharge and take damage. But the rest of these artifacts, they won't deal damage to you. They won't make you overcharge. If the element's already maxed, they're not going to create it. They're not going to harm you like that. So they're really good to have out if it's the elements you tend to need a lot. Plus, they're just kind of good in general for the element economy of the game. But they may be most helpful in getting your signature spells that you can see require 3 different double consumes that are always adjacent. Potions work exactly the same as instants in every way, except for the fact that they are not spells. Honestly, the Excalibur card kind of works more like an Alchemist Fire, or not Alchemist Fire, but like a potion than it does an instant spell. But it is still counted as an instant action because Excalibur, unlike potions, can be blocked. And that is the key. You can use reactions in response to Excalibur. You can't use reactions in response to potions. So if I threw this Alchemist Fire at somebody, well, they would just be taking the damage because they can't react to it. Now, your enchantments and artifacts will stay out permanently. They do not count as part of your hand size. But there are several cards in this deck that will remove them. when played. I can see an example somewhere. Here we go. So if you play Exorcism, you would be able to end an enchantment on the target. So if somebody attacked me with this, say one of the other players was like, I don't like the fact that I am healing, right? They don't like the fact that I'm healing. They could play this card against me. It would hurt me, and it would end my enchantment. Womp womp. Now, luckily, it is an instant, so I could block it and save myself from that effect. But assume I don't have a block. Oh no, my enchantment's gone. I'm no longer healing. It is much easier to get rid of enchantments than it is to get rid of artifacts. Artifacts are a bit more permanent. Once you have them out, they're out. They are very hard to get rid of. There's a few acid-related cards in the deck that will get rid of them. But you're more likely to find a way to get rid of enchantments, or a way to deal damage, or a way to block than you are to, or a way to heal even, or draw cards, or make people discard cards, or stun people, than you are to find ways to get rid of artifacts. They're not quite permanent, but they're pretty much gonna be out for a good chunk of the game once they're out, unless you're kind of unlucky and somebody just happens to already have acid in their hand. Now, I did just mention another keyword there a second ago, actually. It's actually the final kind of thing to note with this game is you can be made to get stunned. You can get stunned. And I'm just using some generic tokens from here. When you're stunned, you'll have a little token in front of you as a reminder. And on your turn, the stuff on your turn will actually change. You'll have a limit on what you can do on your turn. Well, now that we know what the card types are and how you play them, how does that work? How does that work on your turn? How does stun impact that? Well, on your turn, you will start your turn by either taking up to 2 actions, which is playing cards. Right, each card is an action. Right, so you can take up to 2 actions. Don't have to do 2. You can choose to do only 1, but you have a choice of doing up to 2 actions. And if you don't do any actions, you can instead rest. Resting allows you to discard any number of cards from your hand and then create any element of your choice. Then, after you've either done your actions or rested, at the end of your turn, you will draw up 2 or discard down 2 your hand size. So, again, remember, signature spells don't count. So, you always have 5 plus your signature spell is your hand size. Right, so there's 5 cards over here. Right, say this is my hand. Right, if I had this as my hand, I would have to discard a card at the end of my turn. If I had this as my hand, I would draw a card at the end of my turn. If I had this, the most common way to end your turn, because you've taken your 2 actions, I would draw 2 cards. So you're generally getting a pretty constant influx of new cards. This deck might even run out, especially in a longer game, causing you to reshuffle this deck. Nope. Don't select multiple. Put it back in, shuffle, and start again. If this deck runs out, your discard will become a new deck. It'll go back. Player effects can also make you draw and discard. And as well, your reactions you might be played. So you might start your hand with less cards than your hand size because of players impacting like your hand by making you discard cards, making you draw cards, or triggering you to cast a block. If you cast a block, you might be at a little bit of an odds for cards. So sometimes it isn't actually a great idea to hold on to too many blocks or save them because they are holding up spacing in your hand for potentially better things that you could use later. And on your turn, if you are stunned, you might just rest because what stun does, it doesn't impact your ability to rest, but it does impact your ability to do actions. When you are stunned, it changes that first option from take up to 2 actions to take up to 1 action. When you are stunned, you only get 1 action. However, good news, at the end of your turn, you do discard all stun tokens. So if you get stunned, you can even be stunned multiple times. It's not going to matter. It doesn't take away 1 action per. It's just, once you're stunned. And at the end of your turn, you are no longer stunned. Right at the end of your next turn. And there's nothing that ever stops you from getting a turn. Technically, on your turn, you do have a third option between actions and resting. That third option is pass and do nothing. which has only been done once during the many playtests we've done of this game, and it was only to make me laugh. They chose to go first and then immediately passed so that I could actually go first and they could see how the game is played. But that option technically does remain if for whatever reason, say you wanted to rest, but you didn't want to do actions, but you didn't want to rest because, say, the elements were all pretty maxed out, right? Say you had, like, the elements are here, and you know for a fact that the enemy needs spirit, and you are at 1 hit point. If you create any other element than spirit, you're dead. Obviously, you don't want to rest and create an element, because if you create this one, you give them the game. And if you overcharge, then you're dead anyway. So, in that very specific circumstance, you might want to pass and do nothing. So it remains an option. But again, I've never seen it done. So maybe it'll happen in your game. I don't know. Good luck. You'll see if it happens or not. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that makes a bit more sense to you on how you play Arcanum Incantatum, Arenas of the Mad Magi. I'll be making more videos like this eventually in the future, probably a few months from now, as we start working on those expansion packs, as the Kickstarter hopefully will be successful. And if it is, we'll be working on those, so there'll be more videos just like this, teaching how to play. But honestly, the best way I found to teach this is give it a little demo run, play a friendly game, not really playing to see who wins, just kind of getting the feel of it, the flow of it. And generally, if you spend your first game, just kind of getting the flow, going with the ease, everyone's friendly, you don't mind kind of going over the rules with each other, sharing the cards. I find that it works really well to learn this game. It's a lovely, collaborative, cooperative experience. One of the inspirations for this game was I wanted to make a game that was both simple and complex enough to be interesting both to people who play a lot of board games like me and to people who don't. Like a lot of my friends growing up. So this game was created for that purpose, and with the add-on packs, it gives you ways to gradually increase the difficulty as you learn the mechanics. That's all kind of rooted into the game. So I strongly recommend your first game with Arcanum Incantatum be a friendly one, so that game 2 and onward can be a brutal, just painstaking fight to the death to claim the title of Archmage of the Arcanum University. Thank you everybody for watching, and I'll see you in another video, hopefully about this game, or you can go check out either what Lunar Sky Studios is up to on their various socials, or you can go check out what I am up to on my various socials, that will also be in the links below, and I should also have some links there for the artists. They don't have as many as me, but they do have a couple, so I'll see if I can link those in the description below, or at least get them in a comment at some point if they update their information later that I can add. If you want to go check out their art, because they're a cool artist, and it is always lovely to support them. Thank you, everybody, and good night, good day, or whatever time zone it is for you. Bye-bye now, y'all.